work session. Just a note on the order of topics we're going to discuss today. We are actually going to switch the discussion of interfacility transfers to 4:10, and then we'll discuss parklets and sidewalk cafes at 4:40 p.m. So, and we don't have a mayor or a mayor pro tem, so I'll take a motion to nominate a chair to lead the meeting.
Ms. Kelly, I'd like to nominate Mr. Kreider to lead the meeting.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Mr. Greider, lead the meeting.
All right. Could we have a roll call first, please?
Sure. Mr. Bozen.
Here.
Mr. Nichols.
Here.
Ms. Creighton-Smith.
Here.
Mr. Childs. Mr. Greider.
Here.
Ms. Wilder.
Here.
And Mr. Foyce.
All right. And then could someone,
Mr. Chair, or Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Bozen.
Chair or Mayor Pro Tem?
Chair.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to adopt the agenda as proposed or amended, and also the approval of the minutes for July 17th, 2023 council work session.
Second.
all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. So up first, as Ms. Felkley said, we have a discussion of interfacility transfer. So I will turn it over to our illustrious fire chief, Bill Beck.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for your time today. My name is Bill Beck. I am the Chief of Fire Services for Waterloo. Today, I would like to discuss Waterloo Fire Rescue's plan for growth on the north end. I'd like to start with a review of our fire department's mission statement, which reads, "To protect the lives and property of the citizens of Waterloo by being an innovative and progressive emergency service organization." What we're going to discuss today is an idea that explicitly does just this statement, not only in the aspects of emergency services, but in the aspects of being a good steward for our stakeholders' tax dollars. I'd like you to look at the bottom graph first. As it shows, since 2000, Waterloo Fire Rescue has had a steady increase in EMS calls. Steady, that is, until 2018. From 2018 to today, minus the paradoxical drop due to the public's reluctance to go to the ER during COVID, EMS calls have had an upturn in the growth percentage. Several factors can be considered when determining this uptick. The first and most obvious one is the fact that baby boomer population is continuing to grow. As people of my parents' age reach their 80s, incidents of falls with injury, sickness that leads to hospitalizations, or more serious health concerns increases the need for emergency medicine. Another factor is the fact that we've just gone through a global pandemic that has led to long-lasting physical and mental health concerns that may not come fully to light for years. The top slide simply gives an idea of our staffing levels throughout this period. Please note these numbers are what we are budgeted for, and that includes non-sworn members. I'd like you to keep this slide in mind when we later discuss the importance that the SAFER grant has been for the city. The SAFER grant personnel is the reason that there's a bump in those last 2 years. When we talk about staffing the fire department, we need to keep in mind that we need to think in triples because we have 3 shifts. We are budgeted for 110 sworn members. 6 of those are 40-hour non-shift life individuals, like myself, the fire marshal, the fire inspector. This leaves 104 sworn members to staff the 3 shifts. As you can see on the left, this is how it breaks down per shift. These numbers fluctuate a little bit, but we always try to keep them close together. On the right column, you can see where the staffing numbers go. When we have 33 members per shift, or an overall shift strength of 105, barring any long-term injuries, sick call-ins, or military deployments, all 6 stations are open, and Station 3 is a 3-person fire station. Any sick, injured, or deployed employee requires overtime to keep Station 6 open. At 36 persons per shift, we are able to keep all stations open and make Station 3 a 5-person station with a dedicated engine and ambulance. So why am I here? I'm here today to formally begin the conversation that will upgrade Station 3, located at 222 West Donald Street in Ward 3, next to Ward 4, upgrading it from a 3-person station to a 5-person station, with 3 dedicated staff to Engine 303 and 2 dedicated staff to Ambulance 333. So why does Station 3 need to grow into a 5-person station? First of all, it's built to do it. It has a drive-in, drive-out double bay apparatus floor that holds an engine and an ambulance already. Chief Harold Smith in the 1960s designed Station 3 for North End growth. It is Waterloo Fire Rescue's belief that that time is now. At our current staffing levels, when numbers allow, we have been able to staff it with 5. In fiscal year 2023, this Station 3 ambulance was in service 151 days with a dedicated crew and made 822 calls, which is a 6.2 call per day average. On the days that it is not staffed with 5, it becomes an either-or station. So it becomes a station that if the ambulance gets called out as a reserve, the engine company no longer staffs the engine and staffs the ambulance instead. We have 2 stations like this, Station 3 and Station 6. In the last 12 months, we've had 198 calls for service where this has been the case, where we've had to vacate an engine to fill an ambulance request. Station 3 also makes it the first due company and ambulance in a large section of the city that can be cut off due to trains blocking the roadway. When a train is blocking the access at either Logan or 4th and Arlington, in order for apparatus to come from downtown, so we're talking about our aerial, we're talking about our rescue truck, if the fire is just on the other side of those tracks, those engines and that aerial device have to go 19 blocks out of their way to make it to the scene. It's also an excellent chance to remind you that Station 3 responds to the largest area of any fire station. It stretches from the east to the west border and completely covers the north border of the city. Station 3 is also the first due engine and ambulance, if needed, to a large portion of the East Waterloo Township, where we hold a 28E agreement. The North End has experienced some long overdue growth. Just in my time as a firefighter, and since 2004, this area has added Allen College, Northcrest, a new Hy-Vee, doctor's offices, gas stations, and coming soon, the Union at North Crossing will add 187 housing units to the area. All this growth requires city services. This slide shows the North End. The circle is Station 3. Across the street to the south is Allen Hospital, and a few blocks to the east is where North Crossing will be. So how do we fund $1 million question of making this a 5-person station? Interfacility transfers, as I'm going to show, could be the $1.7 million avenue. When Waterloo Fire Rescue is proposing is a routine daily interfacility transfer. An interfacility transfer is basically from Allen Hospital to, say, Mayo Clinic in Rochester or the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics. It's not an emergency run. There are no lights and sirens. It's simply just movement of patients that can't move any other way than by ambulance. Unity Point, or as you'll hear me say, Allen, because I'm that generation of an old medic that it's always going to be Allen to me, is behind our attempt at beginning transports, as they often have to call as far away as Fort Dodge to get an ambulance to do a transport. Allen has stated in meetings that they could produce somewhere between 50 and 80 transports a month simply through their ER. Waterloo Fire Rescue would not exceed 3 routine transports in any 24-hour shift. Reimbursement does fluctuate due to the factors such as the level of care required, specialized equipment, patients' insurance plans. That range can range anywhere from $400 to $1,600 per transport. We also get $13 per loaded mile that we transport. So per loaded mile means we would get paid to go to Rochester, but we don't get paid to go back. So what we really want to talk about is putting the rubber to the road and finding real numbers. When I derived these numbers that we're going to talk about, I'm taking all the averages of what I just talked about. So I used $1,000 per transport because that's the average between 400 and 1,600. I use 92.5 miles as an average because the differences between Iowa City and Rochester, average that out, is that. I would guess it's a little bit lower. Allen has indicated to me that more calls typically go to Iowa City than Rochester. but those numbers kind of wash out because it's a mileage issue. We're paying for fuel anyway. If we don't drive as far, we don't use as much fuel. This makes a gross revenue of $2,202 per transport. 50 to 80 transports average out at 65 transports, or just over 2 per day. If we do those 65 transports a month, we'll make a gross revenue of $143,162.50 per month. Using these averages, as you can see on the right side, will give us a projected average annual gross rate of $1,717,950. Unfortunately, like I said, this is a gross number. We do have expenses that we have against it. So let's break down that $1.7 million. We want to start with the things that we absolutely have to have. So I take $380,000 of it right away for a newly stocked ambulance. To give you an idea of the ambulance replacement schedule, we currently have a new ambulance that we received through, that we are going to pay through bond money at Lifeline being built right now. We asked for enough money for 2 ambulances, and we received enough money for 1. We received $280,000. That ambulance, when it comes from Lifeline, will be completely empty. We will not have a power cot, the power load, the monitor. It's going to cost us $275,000. $5,000, we can make it work because we'll end up stripping down parts from other ambulances that we'll get rid of, but it's certainly not ideal. So that extra $100,000 on the ambulance is going to include a lot of the higher dollar expenses that go with it. Power cots, power loads. I've got 2 current and 1 former medic behind me right now, and I can attest to it as well. Back injuries are a real problem. These power cots have been life-saving, at least back-saving for all of our members. Not just the new power cot system, but also our monitor system. The Zoll M-series monitors X-series monitors that we use, they're the ones that can read an EKG, can shock a person back into life through defibrillation, and a 1,000 other things that I won't go into the weeds with. We bought our last ones around 10 years ago at $28,000 a piece. The pricing I'm getting for them now is anywhere from $50,000 to $68,000 a piece, and we have 7 of them, all the same age. So by adding this money into it, we can immediately start to replenish our products. No one in this room would think about spending $8,000 on a 10-year-old laptop. That's what we just, in essence, did. We just paid $8,000 for a repair to one of our monitors because we can't afford to replace one without some sort of additional funding. So also with this, we're getting a new ambulance every year. This will do a couple things. It'll mean our ambulance fleet will become younger at the cost of highway miles, not idling miles. These are also, like I said, typically not a lot of lights and sirens call. These are typical transports. It also will make our equipment get updated more regularly. This brings us down to $1.3 million. In $1.3 million, we can budget 8 firefighters. This number is derived from the real cost given to me by Bridget to pay $127,000 per firefighter at first-year paramedic pay. Please note that this includes a salary, benefits, and pension for each one of them. And I'm trying to be as realistic as I can here. So I'm saying first-year paramedics because that's what we'll be staffing. We'll be adding these jobs to it, not first-year firefighters, which we'll technically be hiring. That's a savings about $20,000 per individual. Starting wage for a firefighter is in the 50s. First-year paramedic pay is in the 80s. And a brand new hire that's already a paramedic can act up and make that paramedic pay. So this is an absolute number. It's $1,016,000 that will go towards that. Now, I just said that's for 8 firefighters. And just a few slides ago, I said I'm only looking for 4. Well, the city took a risk when they agreed to do the SAFER grant 4 years ago. That SAFER grant money ends January 1st. We are budgeted to finish the fiscal year out with those. After that, we have to find the funding for it to keep them. This interfacility transport will cover those 4 SAFER grant individuals plus 4 more firefighters that we need to get our numbers where they have to be so that we can properly staff 333, the ambulance at Station 3. I also looked up on our friend Google, F550s, which is what we drive, can achieve 13 miles per gallon on the highway. I think a realistic term would be 5 miles to the gallon with an ambulance chassis involved with it. It's a gigantic bread box going down the road. So using our averages, we'll accumulate 144,300 miles annually. Since March, the highest retail price for diesel in the Midwest has been about $3.95 a gallon. This equates to $133,997, which you can see I've subtracted there. That leaves us $207,000 remaining that we will be over our revenue for our project. Now, we do have additional expenses out of that $207,000. It'll be things like, obviously, we're going to need more maintenance on our fleet. We'll need tires. We'll need routine maintenance. Certainly, initially, I'd figured less than $100,000 for all of that, and that includes all of our apparatus. Because as we age out each year and getting a new ambulance, those older ones may or may not need additional help. We'll also have some additional schooling for our paramedics that may want to take. That is called critical care paramedic. Hawkeye offers a bridge class for that. It's a 6-week class. It costs $300. Pittance, in comparison to this, the additional money, though, would be useful in paying the overtime for our employees to go to it. They are doing a service for us. We would want to make sure that they're properly compensated. Let's see. So to start this project, obviously, I need to have funding. We have a civil service list that's open right now, so I could do hiring right now. As far as getting a new ambulance, typically from the time you sign a contract to the day you get an ambulance is about a year out. What I'm going to be asking for is a budget amendment for $750,000. We wouldn't spend that money all at once. As a matter of fact, we wouldn't even have the ambulance to buy until next fiscal year, but it needs to be out there that we need to buy that. I can't do these things with our current fleet. Our current fleet is taxed where it needs to be taxed as far as our call volumes. This is adding more call volume, a lot more miles, and we don't have the personnel to do this. In previous years, Councilman Bozen can remember, we routinely would do transports. We would hire back for overtime for that. This is not a feasible long-term overtime situation. We need to have the personnel in place right away. Otherwise, we'll run into overtime fatigue. We'll run into paramedic burnout. Our overtime will then no longer be voluntary. It'll become mandatory, and I'm sure you can all guess what that does to morale when someone is told you'll work another 24-hour shift. So, like I said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask for a budget amendment for $350,000 for the new ambulance, along with 4 firefighters starting on September 1st to get through their training. These are still going to be firefighters. I want that to be absolutely clear, is these individuals doing transports are no different than any other member of Waterloo Fire Rescue. And they'll move around. We won't always have the same people doing them. It's important that we never lose that ability to do all the things that we can do that the city needs us to do. So last year, like I said, Station 3 was a 5-person station for 151 days. If you average that out, that averages out as 9.9 hours per day that Station 3 had 5 people. With capping at 3 transports a day, we would average about 14 hours per day. So we would have a revenue stream. We would be assisting our citizens more in the day, plus adding an additional service to the city. So again, we want to talk a little bit about why does it have to be Station 3? Well, Station 3, again, it has the infrastructure to build it. That's why I feel Waterloo Fire Rescue can do this better than anyone else. A private company were to come in, they've got to find a building. They've got to hire people. They've got to get ambulances. They've got to create billing systems. We have all those things in place. All we need is the additional people and the additional apparatus as we receive them. Because I'm asking the members of our fire department which are composed mainly of International Association of Firefighter Local 66 members, I've asked a representative from labor to come up and share their belief in this project as well. So everybody, this is a paramedic Levi Hubka, who's also on the e-board.
So for those that don't know me, my name is Levi Hubka. I'm the secretary for Local 66 as well as an assigned paramedic on 334, which is Station 4 at University in Amesboro. As the local or the bargaining unit, we're cautiously optimistic. Obviously we think this is a good idea. It can bring another service to the city, increase some revenue, improve some of our equipment. We obviously, want to be a part of the discussion on how to build it and how to make it work. Because like the chief mentioned, currently we're not really set up with our equipment or personnel to do it with our current call volume. I think it would bring a benefit not only to the city and the department, but to the union as well. Like you said, it'll be another service to the city. It's another apparatus that is available for 911 calls. I don't have statistics, but there's a lot of days where we have 5 ambulances out of our 5 ambulances going on calls, so there's definitely a need for another ambulance. And then that's just another apparatus and more personnel that are also available for car accidents, house fires, everything else that we do. So again, I think this is a good idea to look into, and we hope you guys consider it, and we would love to be, as the union, be part of the discussions on how to move forward. So.
Kelly should have sent you my presentation and notes. If anyone has any additional questions or needs more information, I can do some research to get back to you, or I can answer them now if possible. I'm always happy. My door is always open. My phone is always ready. So, are there any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Breslin.
Thank you. Chief, I think it's important when we brought up about critical care medics to discuss why we need them, because certain transports, my understanding, require a higher level of care than even what your standard paramedic can give, correct?
Correct. So think of any emergency medical technician as a tier up. So you start with being a first responder, you become an EMT, you can become an advanced, then you go up to paramedic, and then the next step up is critical care. It's just a level of skills that they are able to do. I believe critical care, you can monitor, you can drip blood. They can run vents, monitor more medications.
But it also relieves the hospital of having to send a nurse with you, is that correct?
Correct, it can. We would still have the opportunity to ask for a nurse.
If you didn't have the
If
medics available.
if we didn't have the critical care ones, which we may or may not have initially.
And when do you take possession of this ambulance we have ordered right now?
I believe medical supervisor just sent out an email to Lifeline. He CC'd me in it, and they haven't responded back on when we'll receive it. It's in the queue, whatever that
Okay,
means.
because you definitely need, to start this program, you would need a very roadworthy ambulance to put on
Absolutely.
40,000 miles in a year.
Absolutely. I think we could do it for now. I think our fleet is good enough for the short term, but a long term, it just doesn't happen.
And the importance of the ability to purchase a new ambulance every year.
That's critical.
Because
That's
you'll need to
huge.
do that with this program.
And it's not only important just for the fleet.
It's also important for the equipment that's on that ambulance.
Right. It's important for the equipment, and we're no longer utilizing bond money for that. It's a revenue stream that bond money it's up to you guys. That's not my lane to determine where the bond money comes from.
So there would be a cost savings as far as to the taxpayers that in the capital improvement program, you wouldn't have to request a new ambulance.
Correct. You could put that money towards, an aerial that we'll need, possibly a tiller if that's what you want to do. I would be a hero to everyone if we got a tiller, but that's your lane, not mine.
Okay, well, that's all I have. I appreciate your presentation and your time.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Nichols.
the transports to Mayo and Iowa City, were there ever any discussion, or is Unity Point just limited to those two facilities, or has there been any Des Moines discussion?
That's a great question. And we just talked about that at my staff meeting today. We would probably look at Des Moines as well. What I don't want transports to Omaha or Council Bluffs. where our apparatus is taken out of the city and our citizens are no longer being served that way. One of the nice things with Allen is we won't sign any contract. They've stated we will absolutely be a benefit to them. They will call us first, but there's no contract saying that we have to haul someone. I think a 2-hour one-way trip is more than enough, that by the time they got back, we would be good.
Others?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Wilder?
So just so I understand it, the funds to fully man Station 3 would come from the work that you do with Allen.
The additional funding that we would gain through revenue
Yeah.
would go towards our staffing so that we could hire 4 more.
So you came in here with a solution.
Absolutely.
That's nice.
That's the rule when you come into my office is I don't mind if you have a problem. You don't even have to have the right solution, but you needed to put enough time into it to have some investment in it.
That's nice. I think I appreciate that part of this, and of course that this is happening in my ward. So that just guarantees safety and on that side of town, especially. We know how the train can get when you live here. You know how it is. So I can only imagine that 19 blocks that you have to take just to get over there, and how that takes away from, what was the time? Was it 4 minutes, Rob? Yeah, 4.5 minutes. So thank you for this. This is great.
Mr.
Ms. Belinda Creighton-Smith?
Chair, I would like to just express my gratitude for you figuring out this dilemma. I know when we had our tour, we talked about it. My constituents oftentimes might find themselves having to wait, even though you work very hard not to do that. So I appreciate this work.
Thank you. I live in Ward 4. My entire assigned career has been at Station 1. So especially my time on the ambulance is 331. I think I understand a lot of the needs of the North End, and I'm extremely excited about this project and our ability to do well.
One last comment, sir, if everyone's done.
Yes, I'll go last.
Okay, and I also wanted to point out that, unless the chief wants to, is the fact that the busiest ambulance in Waterloo is 331.
Correct.
The downtown ambulance. I mean, I rode it for 10 years. I understand the complexities of it. But the important thing is having a fully staffed Station 3 ambulance. Takes a lot of that load off of
Absolutely.
331, and it affects the well-being of all of our medics.
Absolutely. And by staffing this one to 5, it then helps Station 6 on the opposite corner of town at Ainsborough and Ridgeway Station 6 is prone to brownouts due to overtime problems. This additional personnel will help assure that that doesn't happen. And again, I don't want to sound like we can guarantee it, because who knows when the next pandemic comes or somebody breaks their shoulder in a softball game and we have to have all kinds of people on long-term disability.
Yes, Chief, I want to thank you and the representatives from Local 66, because the SAFER grant, which we voted on 4 years ago, we know is critical to helping get Station 6 back online in a more fundamental way. And obviously, folks get hurt over time. You and I just had this conversation. We have some folks out, and that's understandable. But this plan, which I'm really excited, along with others, is that we're making sure that not only are folks on the north end taken care of, but it's helping us distribute that care across the whole city, so everyone benefits from it. And I want to applaud you for coming with a solution rather than just a problem, because that's really huge. As the son of a firefighter, I know how important it is to take care of our folks, whether it's in the short term or the long term. So I want to thank you for thinking of that. And I'm really excited to continue this conversation moving forward, because I think it's what Waterloo needs.
I appreciate all your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
All right. With that, we next have a discussion on the parklet ordinance and sidewalk cafe ordinance.
I did just get a text from John that he's on his way. So
Okay.
I think if we could
Hold off for a couple
wait
minutes?
just
Okay,
a little bit, maybe recess.
sure.
Motion to recess until Councilman Childs arrives.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are recessed.
Well, that recess was great timing for me.
Oh, good.
we'll let Mr. Boson explain the story afterwards, with the stipulation that Counselor Childs is here. I will take a motion to end our recess.
Second. I will make some said motion.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of returning from recess?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and so we now are on our discussion of the Parklet and Sidewalk Cafe ordinances. Mr. Childs.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So what we have here to propose for council are, how many years ago was the resolution for sidewalk cafes?
The sidewalk cafe resolution is,
Not sidewalk cafe, sorry.
ancient.
Ancient, yeah,
Sure.
okay.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll go with ancient. So we have had a resolution to allow for sidewalk cafes, but what Mrs. Felkley has done is gone ahead and drafted that into the ordinance form. So you should have in your packets both ordinances. So really not much is changing except making these rules solidified in our code for the sidewalk cafes. We already have a few sidewalk cafes, as you probably are aware, that are established through resolution, but now they'll be established through ordinance with proper processes and all of that kind of stuff located here. Nothing's really changing about that. What's the new thing that I would like to propose to council are the parklets. So we've talked about this in the past. We've had a work session. We didn't have an ordinance at that time. We do now. This ordinance is based on Windsor Heights, so they have this same ordinance. So Mrs. Felkley was able to utilize that for some of our review here. There was a lot of work done by Main Street Waterloo to make this happen in the first place. So I really am appreciative for them. And the primary goal of this is not for the city to start its own parklet plan. It's to allow restaurants in areas that may have restricted sidewalks or smaller sidewalks to have an extension past that sidewalk into the parking space. This ordinance does allow us to limit the amount of parklets that are allowed per block so that we can control any issues that may arise or could arise through having too many of these on one block. It also specifies the length that the parklets could be, materials that they should that they are able to be made out of, really puts it all really specific, talks about the fees. So there's a fee for the application itself, and then a fee once you have received permission to use that parklet. I know Main Street has come up, has discovered some organizations external to the city that are able to create these parklets that already have a really great plan for that. And then, of course, the business would be able to create their own as long as they are following our guidelines here. This would go through code enforcement if there are any issues. So we do have, if there are problems, the city's right to take that away. If we have any issues through police that arise, again, we do have the ability to take this away, just like we would any other license that are issued through the city. So I'd like to propose this. I wanted to know if there were any questions, any concerns. I guess I'll call Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Boson.
Thank you. The parklets and the sidewalk cafes basically says the entertainment district, which is East and West Fourth, correct?
It would,
But that's what it says in here.
yes.
Okay. So, and then it says Franklin to Washington, East to West Fourth.
Yes.
But what about other areas downtown that we already have sidewalk cafes that aren't in the entertainment district? Because it limits the sidewalk cafes to East and West Fourth. But yet, as you drive down Fifth Street, and you get on the west side, you'll see a number of
Yes.
places
yes, you
there
will.
with tables and chairs out on the sidewalk. And are they permitted? Do you know, Kelly, if are they following the sidewalk ordinance at all?
They are currently permitted sidewalk cafes, yes.
Will they continue to be permitted since this says it's in the entertainment district only on this street?
That is for the council to decide if you want the entertainment district to be, that pertains to these specific requirements to be along East and West Fourth. If you want it expanded, I think one thing to keep in mind is if you allow a business to have both a parklet and a sidewalk cafe, if you also want that business on West 4th Street to be able to have a parklet on that heavily trafficked street. So those are things for council to take
Right,
into
okay.
consideration. That's a little bit of what staff's concern was when we met in July, was, you know, there's a higher rate of traffic, there's additional lanes to be putting a structure into a parking space on West Fifth and East Fifth. So that's kind of why we decided to limit it to West Fourth. But if council wants that expanded, we can do
I'm not
that
in
as
favor
well.
of expanding, I just was curious if that, we already have
That was kind of the thought process.
sidewalk cafes, and then, so you need a permit for a sidewalk cafe, which is a $50 application fee and a $100 permit if it's granted. And then for the, according to the ordinance, you need $50 permit fee for the parklet and $200 if it's granted.
Yeah.
So do you have to have a sidewalk cafe permit to have a parklet? Do you have to have both?
No.
You do not. You could
The
do
one would
or the
suffice for
other.
both? Well, one would suffice, the parklet would suffice for both.
No.
No, the parklet would only suffice for the actual physical structure that is placed in the parking spot.
Okay, so then what about the sidewalk cafe then?
You'd have to fill out an application for each one.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm trying to get at. So
Yes.
So it's $400
Yes,
for both.
essentially.
One's $250, one's $150.
Yep.
Okay. And then have we haven't worked out how many would be in a specific block.
That would be up to us
Because-
to decide.
Because the more you get on a specific block, the less parking we have. Correct?
Yes.
So
I think that's something that we have to decide, and if we can crunch through that today, that I'm sure Mrs. Felkley would appreciate that.
The ordinance does provide that council has the ability to limit by resolution.
Perfect.
Okay.
So you wouldn't necessarily need to decide that today. That can be some additional discussion, because I do think Main Street's gonna probably want to be involved with that, with getting the buy-in from the businesses as well.
And then all of the permits and everything, and the money would all come through your office, correct, Ms. Velkley?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Creighton Smith.
are the specifications for the sidewalk cafes the same on in the business district as it is on, what is it, West Fifth, 4th Street, further
So
down?
the requirements for the parklet, for the physical structure, are the same for whatever locations that we allow.
And what about for the sidewalk cafes that
They-
Mr. Bolsa mentioned?
So the sidewalk cafe, they're just the tables and chairs that are out beside a business on the sidewalk itself that allow businesses to use our sidewalks to have a cafe outside. The parklets are the physical structure that go into the parking lot. So they're two separate things.
Right, so, I mean, so anyone could have any kind of chair or table out there and it would be a sidewalk cafe?
Mrs. Felkley, could you clarify that?
No, not necessarily. There are currently, the part of the process that someone goes through to get a sidewalk cafe now is that the aesthetic appearance of that sidewalk cafe gets scrutinized by Planning and Zoning and Main Street Design Review Board. So,
Thank you, yeah.
so
what I
that,
want.
that same process would translate through what's proposed here.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Are you done, Ms. Creighton Smith?
Yes, I am, thank you.
Mr. Nichols?
what's the current average square footage of a parking space? And is there a limitation to how many parking spaces can be taken up? I just want to clarify that.
They're the length restriction in here. I believe it's 75 feet. So that would be 2, I believe. 3. 3. If they were at the maximum length.
Three parking spots?
Yes, that's what Mr. Nick. Two.
And I guess
Jessica's
width of the
saying.
parking
Main
spots.
Street is saying 2, so I will go with that.
And then, I guess, do we know the square footage of a parking spot? Just
I don't know that. Also, man, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm supposed to have to say, Jessica Rucker, Main Street, Waterloo. When we wrote the manual that was submitted to you guys, which then the ordinance is now a part of, we did look at the measurement of the parking spaces. So it doesn't go all the way out to the very edge at the lane of traffic. It gives it a little bit of space to stay in, and there would be bollards required to be placed. So, and requirements on structure to make sure like it's not just a bench and then you could fall into the street. So there's structural requirements for safety.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Wilder.
So I actually, when I went out of town, I saw a lot of these parklets, and they gave the best vibe. Like, it was so cool to be able to sit outside and eat, but then still be in the restaurant vicinity. So I think that would give downtown Waterloo a different energy and space. But for the businesses that Mr. Bosa mentioned that wouldn't be in this, what was it called, entertainment district, when you have a business downtown Waterloo, there's still like a certain amount of feet you can use to have tables and chairs and things like that out there that wouldn't be a part of this.
None of the parklets,
No, not of the sidewalk
or the
cafes.
sidewalk cafes.
Yes, because it wouldn't. It's not a part of the city's sidewalk. Because the sidewalk cafe, as you said, is city sidewalk, right?
Yes.
But in front of the businesses downtown, we're allowed a certain amount of square footage, like from the door, to have seating out there. So I guess I'm wondering, like,
Will that affect?
I know it probably wouldn't affect that, but I guess one would say they don't have to apply for a sidewalk cafe if we already have so much space to use in front of our building. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
That's right or not.
yeah.
Y'all getting what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
I don't know if that's correct or not.
And no, because I have my business is downtown, and so I can put like outdoor seating there, without this sidewalk cafe
Right.
ordinance, because it's not city sidewalk, correct?
And I would add too, if council did want to regulate the aesthetics of a sidewalk cafe that would be on the Fifth Street side or a different area, you could set a different, you could perhaps set the Main Street district boundary for your sidewalk cafes and then limit your parklets down to the West Fourth area. So you do have some options and some flexibility with that. I think taking staff's concerns of putting a parklet on like West Fifth Street, for example, is something to take seriously. But if you want to have more of an aesthetic control over the sidewalk cafes, definitely think about expanding it to the Main Street district.
Well, I guess why I was asking is because those businesses would still be able to have outdoor seating, even if they weren't in this district, based off of the space that we're allowed when we obtain the space, correct?
That might be correct. I'm just not the aficionado of that. I'm aware of
Jess,
some
do you know
other
what I'm talking about?
businesses that have seating outside, but I can't fully speak to it.
Because, like, let's say the establishment, the pub next door to my store, has seating, but it's not on city sidewalk.
So it depends on the type of business ultimately. If there's food license or alcohol license, that there would be permits required because of their licensing.
Cafe permit.
Yeah, so like a pub has to expand their alcohol service, or they typically apply to have their alcohol service outside on that outdoor cafe, so that way people can take their drinks out and don't leave them inside. So there would be licensing involved, and then we do, as long as you're in the Main Street Design Review area, request that all of those come through us for approval to make sure that you're not just throwing a bucket outside and calling it an outdoor cafe.
But would that be a part of the sidewalk cafe, or would that be a part of, this is just what I want to do in front of the doors of my business?
Like I said, it would depend on the type of business. Like as a storefront, I'm not aware that there's like a license or permit that if you wanted to put a little seat outside of your storefront, like a retail storefront,
It would be separate from the sidewalk cafes, I'm assuming.
I think,
'Cause I feel like
that's
that's
my
two different
understanding, but I'm not 100% clear on that part.
And I
But
guess the reason why I was asking
do
is
some
because you said,
looking
would there be, like,
and
would
get back to
the
council.
businesses down here would they still be able to have their sidewalks? And I'm saying, in my mind, I would assume, or the cafe, because I'm assuming that it wouldn't have anything to do with the sidewalk cafe, because you're given a certain lot of space to use when you have a downtown establishment.
And Main Street Waterloo's request would be that for the sidewalk cafes specifically, you do include our entire downtown district, because that's going to eliminate a lot of businesses from being able to have outdoor space. And that's not fair to them.
That's only on city sidewalks, right?
Well,
I think that's where we're trying to, I think we have to do some research to figure out exactly what's right with that or what's accurate with that.
Yeah, because what Jessica's explaining, especially for establishments that have a liquor license, they have to expand the premise so that you can serve out there. I am aware that there's a business that comes to mind downtown on, I think it's West Fifth, that has table and chairs set up
Yeah.
outside. So those are some things we'll have to work through.
And that's the one that I was talking about. You mean by the jail? Over here?
No,
West,
I was thinking on West Fifth, actually.
Oh, okay.
between Jefferson and Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll do some checking.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Boson.
so this isn't anything that we're gonna establish until, probably for next year? I mean, it's too late in the year to,
And that would be a question for council. I would like to move, I'm not going to make this motion right now, but I would like to see this on our next agenda for our first reading for the ordinance. I'd like to see them both there. I know we have some work to do in order to get council's request on, but I think we need to get it on sooner than later.
the ordinance isn't, the sidewalk cafe ordinance, from what we just discussed, isn't ready to come back because it clearly states East and West Fourth.
Well, yes,
And
but
we need to change that language
agreed.
to include Main Street, Waterloo proper.
Yes,
Am I incorrect in that?
No, you're not incorrect and that would be great for council to hash out right now.
yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
So
Got
can we,
5 minutes.
all right, well, in 5 minutes, so I would move that the,
Do you want to see it expanded to the Main Street District or
Sidewalk
for that,
cafe.
yes,
I do,
Yes.
Just a sidewalk cafe.
just the sidewalk cafes.
but it just seems to me, and I mean, but it just seems to me like there's a lot of hoops to jump through for this year for parklets to establish, whether we establish it beginning of next year, pass it this year and establish it next year, because it's got to go through the Main Street Design Board. It's got to go through planning. It's got to go through the building inspections. The Public Works has to have a say in it because it can't impede the flow of water
Well, right.
for the storm drains. I mean, there's a lot to work out. We can pass this, but there's a lot to work out before someone can put a parklet in.
Mrs. Rooker, would you mind commenting?
So as we wrote the manual and the guidelines, we met with all of the departments and we got what their requirements were. And that's how the design guidelines were written. So exactly like having the platform so there can be water flow underneath, making sure that it's ADA compliant, talking with the building inspection or the building department with how tall it can be, working with Public Works and help on requiring the bollards, so the traffic controllers, as well as the required signage that we had in the manual. So we've worked through all of that with them. I do have at least one business who would be willing to be our guinea pig this year if this were to get implemented. So that could create some excitement and potentially have more for next year if this were all to get passed and implemented still this year.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Nichols.
So say we did have this guinea pig and they were to go through that permitting process, would they not then have to go in front of all the different people you talk to? Or is there an internal Main Street process that person would have to go through when they design it?
We have our design review council, and this has been sitting on our agenda, so it could be an email vote, but we would definitely call in maybe a special meeting to make the approval to move things along. And then as far as having to go to each department to sign off, the way we wrote the manual was so that you didn't have to go to each and every department to get signed off on everything, to make it easier for that end user to implement a parklet.
But there's still inspections.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. With that, regardless of implementation, because I don't think that's something that I want to put into a motion, I would like to move that we place this on our next agenda, our next public council agenda.
We need to make a motion for that?
Yeah, so in work sessions, we don't have motions, but I believe that we can, take
Mrs. Felkley?
the,
Yeah, we actually can make.
can you?
motions. Yep,
Okay.
we can make motions in work sessions.
So I'd like to make that motion.
We just rarely do them.
Okay,
In fact, this would be the first time we've done it.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Second.
okay. All right, so all of those in
Who seconded?
Me.
Miss,
Okay, I didn't hear you, I
Crittenden.
apologize.
So all in, do we want to do a voice vote or do we want to do a roll call vote?
We can do roll call,
Okay.
and I can call it out too, so that'll make it easier. So I got Mr. Childs making the motion and Ms. Creighton-Smith with the second. Mr. Bozen,
Yes.
Mr. Nichols,
Yes.
Ms. Creighton-Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Childs,
Yes.
Mr. Greider,
Yes.
and Ms. Wilder.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes.
All right, thank you.
All right. So we will come back to that at our meeting on the 21st.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all. To the Waterloo Finance Committee meeting, roll call, please.
Mr. Bozen for Mr. Foyce,
Here.
Mr. Nichols,
Here.
and Mr. Greider.
Here.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Nichols.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as well as the minutes of the July 17th, 2023 meeting as proposed.
And the July 31st.
And July 31st meeting as proposed.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. So we have an agenda. Could someone take travel requests, please?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Nichols.
I'd like to approve the following travel requests. The first is for Abraham L. Funches Jr. for Executive Director of the Human Rights Commission, and that is for the IAOHRA 2023 conference in Bethesda, Maryland, between August 13th and 17th, 2023. Amount not to exceed $3,493.40. Then next is for Brock Wheeler, Fire Marshal, and Dave Jensen, Captain, for the Iowa Fire Investigation Annual Seminar in Johnston, Iowa, between September 13th and 15th, 2023, amount not to exceed $1,140. Third is for Jeremiah Van Dyke, Fire Inspector, for the Iowa Fire Investigation Annual Seminar in Johnston, Iowa, between September 13th and 14th, 2023, amount not to exceed $433. Next is for Sam Hess, Lieutenant, for the Northern Ohio Board Certified Vehicle Rescue Training in Alliance, Ohio, between September 12th and 15th, 2023, amount not to exceed $1,205. Next is for Jennifer McGee, Bookkeeper / Administrative Assistant, and that is for the Nan McKay HCV Rent Calculation Online Course between November 7th and 9th, 2023, amount not to exceed $750. Next is for David Deeds, Airport Board Member, for the Jumpstart Air Service Development Conference in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, between June 11th and 13th, 2023, amount not to exceed $2,679.35. Next is for Adrian Miller, Economic Development Specialist, for the National Brownsfield Training Conference in Detroit, Michigan, between August 8th and 11th, 2023, amount not to exceed $2,924.20. And finally, Mayor Quentin Hart, U.S. Conference of Mayors in San Diego, California, between September 6th through 10th, 2023, amount not to exceed $3,250.
Second.
All right, are there any questions on any of these items?
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair, on
Mr. Boson.
items 2 and 3 for the fire chief. I believe he's still here, yeah. They're all going to the same seminar, but the two combined are $1,140, and the single one is $433. Can you just kind of give us a highlight of why there's a difference?
Yes, Bill Beck, Fire Chief. I believe Lieutenant Van Dykes is the one that's the odd man out.
Yes, sir.
He will not have lodging. He's going to drive home every evening. So no lodging is involved for his. The other two have lodging.
Very good. Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. Could someone take pre-authorizations to expend over 20?
Excuse me, Mrs. Potter, can you hold on? We're in the middle of a meeting. Okay, we're in the middle of our meeting, sorry.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Bozeman.
I'd like to approve the following pre-authorization to expend over $2,500. Center Garage Diesel Probe amount $3,239.76 plus shipping and handling of $401.69 to replace Diesel Probe 2 due to lightning damage at the fuel island. The Center Garage Fuel and Island repairs amount $38,000 plus $1,000 shipping and handling for fuel island repairs due to lightning strike. Next expenditure is code enforcement, removal of hazardous trees at 1626 Huntington Road in the amount of $2,675. Court order removal that will be charged back to the property owner. Number 12 is Culture and Arts Registration Software Annual Fee, the amount $3,487.15 for the annual license fee for registration membership software to be used by the Waterloo Center for the Arts and Phelps Youth Pavilion services from July 2023 to June 2023. Number 13 is the engineering membership dues, amount $6,584 for the FY 2024 Middle Cedar Watershed Management Authority dues. Number 14 is the mayor FY 24 annual dues in the amount of $3,450 for the annual dues for the Cedar Valley Coalition, July 2023 to June 2024. Number 15 is for the mayor FY 24 annual dues, amount $35,676.42 for the annual intercog dues for July 2023 to June 2024. Number 16 is for the sewer department, a stem nut, $2,565, $100 shipping and handling, stem nut for the Blowers Creek Gate. Number 17 is the street department for curb guards in the not to exceed amount of $20,000 and $1,000 shipping and handling for the expenditures of curb guards for the plow fleet for fiscal year 2023. And number 18 is the street department also for curb guards in the amount not to exceed $80,000 plus $1,000 shipping and handling for curb guards for plow fleet for fiscal year 2024.
Second.
All right, any questions on any of those items? All right, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. And I'll take budget line items. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the project budget for the school resource officers, funded in part by the Waterloo Community School District in the amount of $423,455 as submitted by the police department.
Second.
Any questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. And then finally, bills payment for Monday, August 7th, 2023. I move to receive, place on file, and forward to the full council for this Monday, the amount of $5,930,746.61.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.